Oh, yeah, I can't say this by memory, guys. I have to read it. Okay, we'll start so we can get you on your way. My name is Randy Laug. We're being recorded here. Today I will tell you about my grandfather, John A. Laug, which is right over there in that one. Hopefully he can hear us. My grandpa died in 1947, 6 years before I was born. So everything I know came from either my family members or acquaintances or the old Observer. That's where I've been studying for the last 30 years, reading the Observers. So I grew up with Grandpa when he was born and when he was in the grocery store. So that's where I got all my information out of that. I don't know if a lot of you have ever read one of our Observers. They always put stories of people going to the beach or something. So it was kind of fun over those years. So even though I never saw them, I got to grow up with them. Grandpa was born in 1891 to Harm Jr. and Grace Laug on the farm at the corner of 68th Ave in Cleveland, just outside the village limit. He was raised on this farm, spent a few years in Grand Rapids before returning to open up the grocery store with his brother-in-law, Harry Sichterman. He was a local grocer on Main Street in Coopersville from 1913 until his death in 1947. Of course, in those days there was no building address, but it was located on the north side of the street about halfway down and still remains there today, known to most of AKA Hair Salon at 305 Main Street. A friend of mine, Ron Veldman, bought that a lot of years ago, and together I didn't realize that that was the one that we were doing, but we remodeled the whole front and brought it back to its original condition. And then since then there's been 4 more buildings that have been brought back, and the hairdresser is there today. The new building was called Sichterman and Laug. In 1916, Harry decided to get out of the grocery business, but John A. continued on for another 30 years. John A. is the first, and his first wife, Anna, who's right here, they had 3 children. Anna died at a very young age when Bud, the last one, her youngest, was just 6 months old. John remarried Minnie, who was over there, a Meyer, and together they had another 3 children, the youngest, Calvin, being my father. Coopersville was a booming village at that time. There were several grocery stores on Main Street, but John A.'s motto was aim to please. It was a form of a signature or promise and was written on every grocery receipt. Unlike today, grocers stood behind the counter in a long white apron and a white shirt and a tie. Customers would bring in their first list, 1 pound of flour, 2 pounds of sugar, and eggs. The grocer would scoop out the 1 pound of flour, eggs, and such, and bring them back to the counter where the customer would pay. Kind of like to have that today, wouldn't we? Grandpa told a story one week before the village bank closed. He had purchased the house at the end of Cleveland Street. If he had not withdrawn that $5,000 within a week, that money would have been lost. The year was 1931. The crash was 1929, and the Depression ran until 1939. With banks closing and without notice throughout those early years, that was Depression time. Lois, my aunt, was 2 years old when John and Minnie moved their family and 5 kids to a beautiful home on Cleveland Street located at the end. During the Depression, 1929 to 1939, had to hold balances for customers so they could charge their groceries. Times were hard during the Depression years, and many times we had to carry them for a while. Bartering was also a big deal back then, and exchanges were made for eggs and produce. He enhanced customers with giveaways where you could come up and buy so many dollars of groceries, and he would give a free gift, cup and saucer, in hopes that eventually you would have the collection of dishes. Believe it or not, this is one of them from that period that he was giving away, and that belongs to my aunt yet, so she let us borrow that. So that was the kind of dishes back then that they gave away as a prize. My dad, Cal, and his oldest sister, Lois, both recalled delivering groceries long before they had licenses to drive. Supposedly my dad was driving a lumber truck to Grand Rapids at 14 years old with no brakes. And his dad for many years. When John A. had taken ill, Bud ran the store the last year. He continued managing the store after his dad died in hopes of taking over, but Minnie sold the store a year later. According to his obituary, my grandpa was well respected and liked among his fellow businessmen and customers. He had taken an active interest in the affairs of the community and had been an officer in the Businessmen's Association and was one of the most ardent boosters of the community athletic programs. He was a big Detroit Tiger fan as well, taking trips to Detroit along with his family and friends. He passed away in 1947 at the age of 56 after 35 years of grocer who aims to please. He eventually had 23 grandchildren, and some still reside in the Coopersville area, and part of the Laug family farm on the corner of 68th and Cleveland still belong to the Laug descendant. And that's right over here. Tom Plastumas owns that now, so he has that property and held on to it since then. So, any questions?